As someone who has made many videos about the King of Fighters in the past, I often get requests to cover certain games in the series, ranging from the original KOF titles to the more obscure ones. But after thinking about which game I'd like to cover next, 2005's The King of Fighters XI popped into my head. I've only played this game a few times in the past, but its really cool presentation means that the game has lived rent-free in my mind for the past few years, and I really wanted to learn more about it. To assist me in this endeavor, I've enlisted Hyper Knight Slash, or just Slash for short, to help me learn about the game. Slash is a really good friend of mine and is also really good at the King of Fighters, so he's the perfect guy to ask. And if you like video essays about various games, I really encourage you to check his channel out. Honestly, I don't know much about KOF XI going into this video, but after doing some research, it seems like quite the interesting game. The early 2000s was a very captivating time for a lot of fighting game developers due to the brand new technology that emerged during this period. And although Capcom's fighting game output slowed down, companies like SNK were constantly putting out new fighting games that weren't afraid to experiment with fresh ideas. And while some were better than others, I'm going into this game with a lot of excitement because I remember having lots of fun with it when I was a kid. With a large character roster, a lot of interesting gameplay mechanics, and a BS final boss, there's a lot to cover here. So let's begin exploring the King of Fighters XI. I'm unable to find concrete dates regarding some of the instances that involved the game's development, so you'll have to bear with me here. According to a Japanese article I found, at the AOU 2004 in Japan, a trade show where game companies who were involved in the arcades business would participate, SNK officially announced a bunch of brand new games, including the King of Fighters 2004, and this game was set to run on the NEOWAVE arcade board. Now, if you know anything about the King of Fighters series, you'll know that there's no game in the series called KOF 2004, so what happened? Well, the reason for the game's cancellation has never been stated publicly, but I was able to find an interview from late 2004 involving Falcoon, one of SNK's artists. He stated that the next KOF game wouldn't be called 2004, but its development was going smoothly, and that it would be different to what they were working on under the name of 2004, Maximum Impact, or NEOWAVE, so I believe he was hinting at this brand new game taking the series into a whole new direction. Between this Falcoon interview in late 2004 and the game's official announcement in May 2005, I can't find any information during this period. Seriously, it's like there's a total dry spell of information where nothing definitive can be found. Anyway, the next thing I could find was a Spanish website reporting on the game's official announcement under the name of the King of Fighters XI. But as for how the game got this name, I'm genuinely unsure. Again, I can't find anything concrete. In addition to the brand new name, SNK also had to create some brand new characters, and these were carried out to fulfill certain requirements the developers had for the game. KOF XI's boss character, Magaki, was created to infuriate players and make them dislike him, with the old KOF website stating, "His appearance, movements, skills, and personality were all designed to make people say, I don't like this guy." So for all of you who were angry after being hit by Magaki's bullets, that's by design. It was done on purpose to make him a character that people would hate. Newcomer Momoko also introduced challenges for the game's design team, as trying to include her, I guess quote-unquote cute factor was difficult for the team to achieve. The game's lead designer, Hiroaki Hashimoto, reportedly found it very difficult to design such a young-looking character, and he even stated on SNK's official website that Momoko's age was out of my range. What I think Hashimoto means by this is that normally he's used to designing kind of older, maybe a little bit more mature female characters, so designing a character as youthful as Momoko was a big challenge for Hashimoto. As for Elizabeth, one of my favorite KOF characters, the philosophy behind her design was to create a foil for Ash Crimson, but as development on the game progressed, Elizabeth's character was changed to more of a quote-unquote guiding character. The developers even stated that this decision was a disaster, as it was very unclear what type of character she was for people seeing her for the first time. Back in the early 2000s, SNK had a series of what they called lessons on their website, where users could go to read information about the game before it was released. The author of Lesson 1 states that adding the extra characters from Neo Geo Battle Coliseum to the PS2 port of KOF XI took more time than you may think, as these pre-existing characters all needed brand new sprites for things like emergency evades, for example. The author also reveals that two planned stages, one on a truck driving down a highway and one on top of an aeroplane, were both cut from the game. This truck stage could have been really cool in motion, but now that I think about it, I'm actually kinda glad that we didn't end up getting that aeroplane stage. After suffering from so much motion sickness after seeing this stage constantly by trolls online in Street Fighter V, it's made me hate the idea of potential aeroplane stages in fighting games. Look, anyway, when the game was released for arcades, development still wasn't finished, as SNK still had to work on the PS2 version. According to a Japanese online interview that went live on launch day of the PS2 port, it was revealed that certain moves' frame data, the length of emergency evades, and Duck King's throw distance had been altered, but there were also many more changes that couldn't be mentioned in this interview due to time constraints. When it came time to include characters from the aforementioned Neo Geo Battle Coliseum, SNK looked at which characters in that game were really popular with fans, and they went with the most desired of the bunch. The developers also didn't want to add too many new characters to the PS2 port of KOF XI because they believed that doing so would screw with the game's balance heavily, so they only wanted to add a few more fighters here. Speaking of game balance and characters, let's dive into KOF XI's gameplay. For starters, the game has 5 buttons. You have your regular 2 punches and 2 kicks, but there's also a 5th button dedicated to blowback attacks. This technique is performed in other KOF games by inputting both heavy attacks, but KOF 11 has it on its own button. Characters also have special moves that you would expect to see from them, like the Power Wave, the Super Argentine Backbreaker, and the Psycho Ball, just to name a few. So even as a casual KOF player, I could easily start throwing out special moves without having to pull up the command list. Supers also make a return, and these can do some big damage, especially when you combo into them. One such mechanic that lets you do this is the Dream Cancel, where you cancel a super into another super with your leader character. If you have the required amount of super meter for this mechanic, I'd recommend going for a Dream Cancel, especially if it can close out the round. Now that we're on the topic of meter, let's learn about it from a verified KOF mega fan.
There are two types of meter in KOF 11, the first of which is Power Stock. This is your offensive meter, and used it to perform supers, roll cancels, and tag cancels. Mechanics such as super and guard cancels play a large role in KOF's strategy, so properly managing this meter is crucial. Running out of your offensive meter when you're down on life can often be a death sentence, so you have to be very careful. This ties into team composition, as some characters will spend more meter than their teammates, so you'd want to put them as an anchor. Characters who are good at building meter are often placed on point or in the middle, so having proper team structure is key to forming a unit that functions harmoniously. As for the defensive meter, this is called the skill stock, and use it for techniques like saving, shift, and guard evasion, just to name a few. A lot of fighting games make most, if not all of your resource-dependent techniques dependent on one unified meter, but KOF 11's decision to make the two meters helps it stand out from the crowd. A modern day equivalent of this would be MK11, as that game has the exact same offensive/defensive meter system.
Now that we understand how meter works, let's learn more about KOF 11 specific game mechanics. First up is the Quick Shift, and this allows you to cancel certain attacks into a tag. Yep, that's right, KOF 11 isn't like a lot of the other games in the series where it's essentially a one-on-one fight, as this game features real-time tag maneuvers. Quick Shifts allow you to perform some pretty sweet tag combos. However, you have to keep in mind that it does use one of your skill bars though, so you can't use this willy-nilly. The next mechanic is the Saving Shift, and this can be performed when you're taking damage. One of your partner characters will fly in and attack from the top rope, and this works super well with Tizok. Not necessarily just in terms of gameplay, but because he's a wrestler, this just feels super in character for him. Anyway, as far as I can tell, the opponent can't recover fast enough to block this attack. Even if they throw out just like a quick light kick or something, this attack will still connect, allowing you to safely get out of there. The final mechanic is the Dream Cancel, which I mentioned before. This allows you to cancel super special moves into leader super moves, so keeping your leader alive is crucial when attempting to land one of these. If you have the necessary resources, landing a Dream Cancel in a combo can allow you to make a comeback if you're behind, so it's wise to use these in real matches. Aside from the crazy new mechanics and blowback attacks being mapped to their own button, this game overall feels like classic KOF with its physics and pacing. Even as a really big KOF casual, I can tell that the series has its own distinct gameplay style, and KOF 11 is no exception. This is a very fundamentally sound game when in neutral, and although characters like Kula and Gato are universally agreed upon to be top tier, if you're like me and you just want to have some fun playing with friends, you can pick up pretty much any character you want and just have some fun. Whether you like the OG characters from the early 90s or the brand new ones introduced for this game like Oswald, you'll definitely be able to find someone you enjoy playing as in this game. Personally, I love playing as grapplers, so I love Tizok. Being able to start a combo with another character and then shift into his heavy command grab is super satisfying, and this combo will never get old. As I was messing around in training mode, it got me thinking, what if I use an all-rounder like Terry to start my offense and then combo into Tizok when I'm right up close to land a command grab? Because there are so many characters and possible team combinations in this game, strategies like that are abundant, and it means that you can find one that works for you and your team. It's completely up to you, and I love the shift system as it allows players to formulate their own strategies. I don't have the time or frankly skill involved to thoroughly test out every single character in the game, but I'm sure there are plenty of crazy combos and setups you can do with this tag mechanic, even if it does require some meter. Fighting games need more than the ability to play against another person, however, so let's see what content KOF 11 has to offer. First up is Versus Mode, and this is pretty standard. You boot in, you fight another person, and then you can rematch if you wish. You can also change things like damage values, the round count, time, etc. in the game's options menu, and messing around with these settings can be pretty fun. Next up is Arcade Mode, and this works how you might think. After selecting a team of 3 characters, you fight through a series of randomly generated enemy teams, with some cutscenes throughout to advance the story. This mode ends with a final boss against Magaki. Having to deal with his bullet hell moveset is frustrating, but it makes it feel even better when you take him out. There's also a mode in the game called Arranged, which changes the backgrounds, the music, and even the game balance. Characters like Gato and Kula, who are really top tier in the original, have been nerfed here for example, and after doing some looking online, I found that most people, probably even everyone rather, prefers the original arcade balance due to it being the original most faithful way to play the game. Moving on, KOF 11 also has a training mode and this isn't too bad. While it doesn't have anything like frame data or a hitbox viewer, I wasn't expecting anything like that from a game this old anyway, so it's fine. And it does have the necessary features in order to help you learn the game. You can mess around with meter and the training dummy's movement patterns, helping you to lab certain punishes, for example. There's also Endless Mode, which is the game's version of Survival. This is a gauntlet of one-round fights that keep going until you eventually lose, and the challenge is to see how many matches you can last. I would always try to beat my personal best in survival modes in fighting games as a kid, so playing Endless Mode here was pretty fun and it did bring back some good memories. It's pretty frustrating when you're so close to winning and then you just lose, but there's nothing stopping you from trying again, so it's really cool. Finally, and I've saved the best for last here, KOF XI also has a mission mode. There are 40 missions in total, and they range from only using normals to win a match, all the way to beating multiple enemies under a time limit. While some of them require you to play for minutes at a time, a lot of these are over and done with pretty quickly, and I really enjoyed most of them. Mission mode also lets you unlock certain characters, so if you want to complete a character select screen, then you better start grinding these out. KOF XI doesn't have any revolutionary modes that do something that I've never seen before that blew my mind, but overall there is some decent content here. If the mission or endless modes aren't really your thing, and you also don't have many opportunities to play this game with other people, I'm not sure I'd recommend it, but if you do enjoy these little bite-sized chunks of fun, then it's a pretty sweet deal. Aside from the actual fighting in versus mode, mission mode is probably my favorite mode in the whole game, and I genuinely had a blast playing through it all. While the KOF XI Metacritic page has been taken down, I was able to use the Wayback Machine to find that the game had a 75, which isn't bad at all. I also noticed that in the positive reviews for the game, both the graphics and the complex game mechanics were praised, as not only did the game's competitive depth impress reviewers, the game's great animations and aesthetic made things even better. It wasn't all positive, however, as the game's sprite art was a major point of criticism for some review outlets. Other popular fighting games at the time, like Tekken or Soul Calibur, had been using highly detailed 3D graphics, so SNK's decision to stick with their tried and true sprites was seen as being stale and just not innovative. Another point of criticism for the game was Magaki himself, and I'm sure some of you may have seen this coming. I mentioned before how he was specifically designed to piss off the player, and this worked super well. Reviewers dunking on Magaki by saying he looked stupid and he was just flat out annoying to fight against was a really common trend that I noticed, and honestly, I kind of agree. He's really BS to fight against if you don't know any tricks or exploits, and he kind of looks weird as well. In retrospect, however, reviewers have re-evaluated KOF XI with a more positive point of view, with Complex even putting it in their top 10 SNK fighting games, which is a really bold claim. While KOF XI's legacy isn't really felt today, as many of the new characters and tag mechanics in this game aren't in games like KOF 15, for example, I still see people online praising the game and wishing some of these characters would return, so this game definitely still has its fans. Moving on, in Japan, the game's PS2 conversion launched shortly before the PS3's release, and it was even released after the PS3's launch in Europe and North America. I can't find sales figures for the Western version of the game, but I was able to find a webpage that displays sales figures for the Japanese release, and it reports that KOF XI sold 47,225 copies in 2006. The game was also brought up in a Gamasutra article written about hardcore games on the PS2 launching late into the console's lifecycle, with the outlet stating that it's fantastic to see games like KOF XI launching in the West in an official capacity. The King of Fighters is no stranger to Western releases, but after SNK's financial troubles in the early 2000s, I'm also really glad to have seen them get this game on the PS2 around the world. Overall, KOF XI is a pretty fun game and I really enjoyed my time with it. While it's a shame that some of the characters introduced here, like Oswald for example, haven't appeared in many of the series' recent entries, barring KOF 14, going back to this game and seeing all the familiar faces was really cool. Even though I suck at KOF, picking a random team and just messing around in training mode was really enjoyable, and trying to figure out what I can make work with the tag system is a big part of the game's appeal for me. The game's unique aesthetic and tag mechanics help it stand out, and if you're interested, you can give the game a go really easily on Fightcade. There aren't that many people in the lobby, but if you want to play online with a friend, I believe this is the best way to do so, and the emulation for the game seems really accurate, at least on my end. While it's not my favorite game in the series, KOF XI is a good time, and as it lets me play as both Oswald and Tizok, I have no major complaints because these guys are super cool. Anyway, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.